Today, I'd like to talk about potential violence and civil unrest in Canada. Is Marcus Ray an individual attempting to create violence in Canada by himself, or is he an agent of the state attempting to create more division amongst Canadians? Either way, he is advocating for violence in Canada and he is calling on others to support it. I'm Lieutenant Navy retired Andrew McGillivray. I was a naval war officer for 12 years. I retired last August. I've had 3 overseas deployments, over 500 days at sea, and was a member of the Naval Tactical Operations Group as both a team lead and operations officer. I'm also a founding member of Veterans for Freedom, which was established on the 6th of March, 2022. Veterans for Freedom, or V4F, represents a group of veterans that are concerned about the direction our country is heading, not all veterans. Our organization believes in inclusive patriotism. We don't care about your race, your sexuality, creed, gender, ethnicity, or vaccination status. We believe in putting Canadians first, all Canadians. Over to Tom Quiggin, who's working as the V2 Intelligence for Veterans for Freedom.
Thanks, Drew. As Drew mentioned, my name is Tom Quiggin. I'm a former intelligence officer from the Canadian Forces, and I'm also a former airborne electronic sensor operator. Following service in the military, I worked for the Privy Council office in the Intelligence Assessment Secretariat. That is the organization in government that does intelligence assessments directly for the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. I also worked for 6 years for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police as an intelligence contractor, where I worked at INSET, the Integrated National Security Enforcement Team. Following 6 years with the RCMP, I worked as a senior fellow at Nanyang Technological University in Singapore, where I was involved in research into a series of high-end intelligence projects. I'm also a court expert in terrorism in the criminal court, that is to say Ontario Superior Court, and I'm a court expert in terrorism in the Federal Court of Canada. The Federal Court has also recognized my expertise in the role of intelligence as evidence in a court, and I have taught that same subject for the Department of Justice when speaking to special advocate lawyers and special advocate judges. Today, we'd like to take a little different take on things. Veterans for Freedom, of course, has many individuals who are eminently more qualified than I am to speak about the role of violence, especially social unrest in society. We have veterans who are former Tier 1 operators. We have combat arms veterans, naval veterans. We have intelligence personnel, logistics, and MSE ops who have had a wide range of experience in civil unrest overseas. They've been in places such as Croatia, Bosnia, Iraq, Afghanistan. They've done multiple tours in the Middle East, Africa, and Asia, and including some in South America. More so than many other Canadians, we would argue that veterans frequently recognize the signals of trouble that precede violence, perhaps better than others because we've lived through it so many times. Today, however, we'd like to talk about Marcus Anthony Ray. Marcus Ray, of course, is also known as Mark Chilcott, and he's known as Stephen McGell. He has multiple personas on the internet and in the real world. Among those are inspirational speaker, furniture designer, real estate person, former RCMP auxiliary officer, former city police and rescue diver, and former male stripper. He's also a book author. Currently, he's developing a persona on the internet and the real world as a rancher who is claiming to be creating a constitutional sheriff's association in Canada. He also claims that he was one of the first people into the Ottawa convoy, and he claims he was one of the last to leave. One little problem with all of this, we can find no evidence anywhere to support any of his claims other than he does have a book on Amazon which details the several years he spent as a male stripper. Now, of concern, Marcus Ray is also advocating that the time for peaceful protest in Canada is over. He says now we must draw a line and fight. He claims that large numbers of police and military personnel will support him. He claims that something big is about to happen in Canada and we need to get out there and support him. He says you're going to get that phone call, and when you get that phone call, you need to support Marcus Ray and the people around him. Of concern, however, from an intelligence point of view, is that Marcus Ray has no visible means of support. Marcus Ray, or Mark Chilcott, or Stephen McGell, whatever you choose to call him, seems to have money. He has people traveling across Canada in a truck, towing a trailer, looking to recruit people. He makes social media appearances. He makes physical appearances. Where does he get the money from? Who pays him? For whom is he working? This is a serious question. Now, Veterans for Freedom has cooperated extensively with law enforcement at the municipal, provincial, and federal level on this issue. We have briefed them extensively on his background, his associates, his cross-country recruiting efforts. We have discussed at length with them his intentions towards creating a political space where violence is acceptable. We've given them examples of how he and his associates are trying to drag others into a world of violence. For instance, a number of people who adhere to the white flag movement may or may not realize it, but they're being drawn into the orbit of Marcus Ray, who advocates violence. They need to be aware of the problems they're getting into. These reports we've given to law enforcement in person identify the source reliability and information credibility of the materials we've provided to them. We're not providing them rumors, we're providing them with processed intelligence. Now, it's also worth noting that individuals who claim to represent Marcus Ray have been trying to recruit members of B4F. We have blocked them, and we will continue to do so. At this point, our collective view is that Marcus Ray is either a front for an individual or group that has considerable assets, or he is perhaps an agent of the state. Before you dismiss the idea that he could be an agent of the state, I would encourage you to look up the name of Grant Bristow. Mr. Bristow is the co-founder and the primary actor in the Heritage Front. It was a white power group which created all kinds of problems in Canada, raised concerns about neo-Nazis and white supremacy and all this sort of stuff. There was one little problem with Grant Bristow and his leadership role, however, in the white power movement. He was an agent of CSIS, the Canadian Security Intelligence Service. He was an agent of the government. So all the concerns that were raised around white power at the time were in fact generated by CSIS. If you are of a certain age, you might also recall that certain federal agents in Canada used to go around burning down barns when it was politically convenient for them to do so. So I would ask all members of the public to pay attention to this and start asking some serious questions about the role of political violence in Canada. Andrew, back to you.
Thank you, Tom. Marcus Ray popped up on our radar in mid-April, which is why we put out a joint press release with Canada Marches and Police on Guard on the 21st of April, 2022. We received 2 recorded phone messages and a statement from a person who attended one of their private meetings, which led us to putting out another press release on the 23rd of May, 2022. These press releases can be seen on our social media websites. It is possible that certain elements in Canada are looking to provoke violence or create a political space where violence is acceptable. If that happens, the entire freedom movement will be tarred and feathered with this issue. This is similar to the trucker convoy in Ottawa. There was so much peace and love that they had to place Nazi flags, make up stories, and plant provocateurs to try and get the crowds riled up. I highly encourage everyone participating in freedom rallies or marches to look up the concept of false flag operations. Research examples of where the government has used these in recent history. False flag operations can be quite dangerous and can lead to people's death. Be aware of your surroundings and be aware of people who advocate violence and confrontation. I'm going to highlight 2 points from our code of conduct, which is guidance for our members. Point 3, activating your civic responsibility to the fullest extent possible within the bounds of law and embodying a superior example of peaceful non-compliance. Point 6, refrain from the use of violence in any form toward any member of Canadian society, to include civilians, law enforcement, and/or members of the public service at all levels of government. Veterans for Freedom would encourage the public to avoid getting caught up in this sort of activity and leave it up to law enforcement agencies. With that being said, we call upon the authorities in Canada to address this issue and explain why they're not taking action against this individual, who we believe presents a real threat to peace, order, and good government in Canada. Thank you for your time.